This is Friday, March 4th, 2022. This is AM Prime on this morning. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for being with us. And thanks for staying with us at the end of this week as we head out another week in this new year. Where we in March, the beginning of March already. What you make of that? Let's tell you what's on the program this morning. Of course, we will share with you something later on. Watch this. It has to do with some of what transpired in what was called the Taste of Carnival. In fact, we're having a discussion over that as well in and of itself not too long from now on the program. So that's part of what's coming down. Of course, we're talking also with a lady who deals with domestic violence counseling on the question of there are repeated calls for young ladies who get into trouble with the people who they choose as their partners in whatever arrangements they have that they should. It's an issue that we've gone over on more than one occasion, but the advice that young ladies should choose their spouses and their partners wisely. How solid is that and how foolproof is that? So we want to talk with Ms. Ashley Burnett about that on the program. Of course, we have the staples, the numbers with COVID-19. We'll be telling you about that as well as what's the Newsday poll this morning. We get to that question and the responses when we get there. Also, we're talking a look around the region. We'll see what's happening with the latest in Jamaica and Guyana this morning. As I said, we talk about Carnival also with Dr. Yvonne Bob Smith. Carnival 2022, the taste. Was it sweet? Was it sour? Was it savory? Whatever it was, we want to talk with her about that from some historical and philosophical positions about what the Carnival means to us and what it should mean to those who don't take it as seriously as she and others do. With us now, however, we're talking with Mr. Umar Abdullah. He's, of course, the leader of the organization called the First Wave Movement, and they are one element of a group of people who have taken a new approach to protesting in the wake of what transpired with the tragedy outside the waters in Point-à-Pierre, the Paria tragedy, as we call it. 4 people dead as a result of that. Lots of pathos surrounding it. Well, those people who are calling for answers have taken to picketing outside the homes, the private residences of some of the people who are at the center of it from the company's perspective, and they say they want answers from them. Well, they were picketing the home of the chairman of the company, Mr. Newman George. Yesterday, other people were picketing one of the leading figures in the company's operations, Mr. Piper, about that. Is that appropriate? And what are the dangers with that? We want to talk with Mr. Abdullah about that. Well, I think we have him there in this space. Good morning, sir.
Yes. Good morning.
How are you?
I'm okay.
All right, so you all went on your mission, was it yesterday evening, 6:30, the notice had said that you all would have been undertaking that kind of protest. It happened?
Yes, we were there. When we got there was a contingent of police officers blocking the road and, waiting on our arrival. So
the police were there ahead of you all?
Yeah.
Just give us a sense of what transpired.
Well, but when we got there, there was a police vehicle blocking the road, so we were unable to move past a certain point. And, we parked our vehicles and came out. And police, they all alighted from their vehicles. And they approached me and they indicated to me that, they understand that, I was coming here, and they inquired what was my purpose there and so on and so forth. And I indicated to them that, based on what has been happening as a result of response from the government and state agency Paria, state company Paria, meted out to the families, and what ultimately took place with the divers. We attempting to get some answers and clarity on an interview that was done on a radio station Saturday morning when Newman George indicated that they had sent divers in the water. That was a total lie. They didn't send divers in the water. As a matter of fact, they prevented the divers from going into the water. The divers actually disobeyed the instructions, went into the water, and that is how Christopher was saved. When they attempted to go in a second time, because Christopher indicated that those men were still alive, and they were pounding on the pipes and screaming. Mr. Piper instructed the Coast Guard not to allow the divers to go back in the water. So he basically wanted to address Mr. Newman and that statement that he made, and to try to get a sense of what is going on with PARIA and the board and what is really at stake here. We saw the Minister of Energy putting together a five-member team to look into the matter, and we are of the opinion that that team is a heavily compromised team. We believe that the government, the Minister of Energy, is also a subject of that investigation, and that they cannot investigate themselves.
Help us out here. Help us out here a little bit, if you will. I'm not aware of the composition of the team. Or can you itemize the members of the team?
Well, I understand that the team is going to be led by an attorney. There's also going to be a representative from BP, Shell, and also from the Ministry of the Energy, and a qualified diver as well.
And why do you think it's compromised?
Well, Mr. Mustaq Mohammed was once an employee of BP, and we all understand the relationship with government.
Yeah. And he's the chief executive at PARIA, right?
Yes, he's the CEO.
Oh.
And we also understand the government being a regulator of BP and Shell, these companies. It just doesn't fit well with any citizen in the country that this indeed is a team that is going to bring.
Well, why do you think? Why do you think? Because of that, people will be compromised. Why can't we hope that the people would be professional and would be objective? What they have to?
Well, that's highly unlikely in an environment like as ours. And you would have known from past experiences where teams would have put together, would have been, by government to investigate certain, mishaps in Trinidad and Tobago. Like we had recently, a team being put together to investigate the healthcare system as it relates to COVID-19 and.
There was an editorial in the Express earlier this week, just in this administration alone, about a half dozen inquiries which have been launched in the last couple of years. So the problem with that is, in some cases, we don't know the proceeds from any of those things just yet. But why is it so easy to question people's objectivity and the professionalism when they get on these?
Well, it would have been a better idea, right, to choose an independent team that is independent of government and independent of these companies, and that would have fit better with a large cross-section of the society. And what we are saying is that, just by the fact that Newman George is the husband of Anisette George,
the Speaker of the House of Representatives,
right? That is a conflict of interest right there. In the first place, Newman George should not have been sitting on the board of PARIA.
Because he's on the board, he's chairman of the board, and there's a conflict of interest because his wife is the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Yes.
Well,
so what we are saying is that, we have to be.
Well, what does her position have to do with his? She's Speaker of the House of Representatives. He's a chairman of a state board. I don't think that is new, relationship-wise with. Having conversations and saying it is one thing. Yeah.
But in reality, we are not sure whether or not this is going to compromise the investigation or not. And that's what we are saying. We're just indicating.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, if a police officer, family member, a close family member, something were to happen, or was attacked by a bandit or murdered by somebody, and a police officer is an investigating officer in that particular precinct or that particular division, right? What would happen is that they would not put that police officer in charge of that investigation, because that police officer is too close to home. It's too close to that investigation.
But don't we have
and he
situations?
may very well be.
But don't we have situations in which you have police investigating police wrongdoing?
Because of his closeness to that person.
Don't we have that? Police officers investigating police officers for wrongdoing, prisons officers investigating prisons officers for wrongdoing.
Yeah, I mean that's different. I'm talking about being close to home. That police officer, because that police officer obviously would be driven by emotions.
Well, all right, but
this is why you would not want that police officer investigate that matter.
All right,
because you would want an investigation that is fair.
Right, but how does Mr. Georges, and I have no brief for anybody in this matter, but how does his wife and her position in the parliament have anything to do with so he's the chairman of a state board, and there's something happening there? How does he become compromised, or how does she become compromised in a situation like that?
That's exactly it. I mean, I can't say, you cannot say, but at the same point in time, the element of compromise is there. And we must, as a government, we must be able to avoid that from happening. And this is a very sensitive matter. It involves the death of 4 divers. And let me just add this, all right? We have information that there has been other like instances in the past.
Yeah.
Just December the 6th, there was another incident where an explosion took place in Paria. Now, this was not reported, right? This was kept hush-hush.
All right, so you have information, you know for a fact that it happened?
And know for a fact. And what had happened is that the company or the contractor that was involved in that incident indicated to Paria that the conditions under which they were conducting this process was unsafe. And Paria insisted that they continued with the job.
So
and reluctantly they continued the job. And there was an explosion. A man was caught, his foot was caught in trapped. He was trapped, and he had to be released.
All right, so you're calling for
releasing him had to actually take out his shoes off his foot in order to free him from where he was.
Right. So you're calling for the company to come forth with information about that, correct?
Yes. I mean, we this is a state company, all right, and everything must be above board. We had an accident that took place 37 years ago, where the father of Yusuf died in that explosion. 14 persons lost their lives.
Yes.
Now, what we are beginning to understand, and this is, and I'm just talking about incidents. There are many more incidents, and we have information. The contractors have indicated to us that on many occasions they would have expressed unsafe conditions to Paria, and they would threaten with their contracts if they insisted and continued with their protest.
Do you know any one of them who is willing to come forth and say that publicly?
Well, we are trying to get persons to come forward and speak, because right now what the First Wave movement is attempting to do is to get a number of expertise together so that we can have a dialogue with a team of attorneys where we are going to be moving forward with litigation as regards to this matter. This is a very serious matter, and we should not allow, as a people, as a country, allow these things to continue happening in Trinidad and Tobago. We had an explosion in Nikon. Could anybody tell me this morning where is the report from that incident?
Yeah. All right.
There are citizens right now in that area who are yet to be compensated. No one came forward and met with the people in that community. There has been no report on that incident. So what are we running here? Is it a backyard fabrication shop we are running here?
All right, but I want to get to the propriety of this new sort of, I was going to say the new wave of protests in the country to be picketing people's homes. Is that not sort of, should that not sort of be off limits? Because, you know, so the people live where they live, they have children, they have families, the families and their families, their relatives, whoever they live with, have nothing to do with that. I
understand that, and I had taken certain precautions in going at the homes. I did not indicate in my releases the address of those persons. So the address of the person did not go out in the public.
But I saw something saying, but well, as far as Mr. George is concerned, I saw something in the traffic that I was reading yesterday. They had his address someplace, Westvale Park.
Yes, that address went out to certain individuals, responsible individuals. I did not send it out in the public. And the one that was sent out in the public, I indicated, if you are interested to join us, contact us and we would give you the address. And those persons, we were selecting persons whom we would have preferred to come there. We were not bringing anybody that we, in our mind, would be reckless and what have you and so on.
Yeah,
but I mean, even when we went to those houses, we made sure not to put the house itself on film. All right, we took no pictures, and we were very cordial when we went. Just like how you'd go visit anybody, you ring the bell. You say good night, or in the case of, Mustak, I gave the salams, assalamu alaikum, and that is how we went about our business.
So
we did a live.
You all visited Mr. Mohammed's home as well? Is what you're saying?
Yeah, and also Mr. Piper's home.
Right. Yeah, but you don't think that was the phrase a bridge too far with going to people's private
you may
homes?
say that, Mr. Johnson. You may say that, but let me just say this.
Okay.
Sometimes we have to send it up a notch in order to get what it is you want, the objective that you're trying to achieve. And what we're trying to achieve here in Trinidad and Tobago for a very long time is to rid ourselves of the corruption that actually takes place within government and within our public sector.
Right, yeah, fair enough.
For far too long, we have been allowing things to happen in this country without even taking a stance, a very serious stance. And I think if people understand that they hold a position, and that position requires them to perform in a particular way and to service the people of this country in a particular way. And if it is they don't, they're going to very well risk themselves, people coming at their homes. I think they're going to think twice the next time if it is they want to involve themselves in wrongdoing. Because, people are often, like policemen are oftentimes, allegations are thrown at them because they would have, done something wrong in the execution of their duties. They would have wronged someone. They would have gone outside the principles of the police service, and whatever they did, whatever they would do, would not represent that of the police service. But the police officers will tell you, if you don't like it, put us in court or go to court.
Yeah.
But that police officer is not going to be held liable. He's not going to have to take monies out of his pocket if the state is sued. So what I'm saying is that if persons are going to be held personally liable,
but he could do his job.
In this country,
don't public officers
have a lot less of those things happen.
But don't public officers have their jobs on the line and their reputations on the line when they end up in some situations such as that? But I want to continue to examine. So you take action against the public official or the official in whatever agency, public or private, but you pressurize their families, their children, their relatives in the same process. And you're not making any distinction where that is concerned, that you're taking it a bit too far. It's new sort of
Well,
guerrilla tactics.
If Mr. Newman George knew that this was going to happen and he would compromise, himself by us going at his home and that sort of thing, because we were not charged by going to Newman's home. We were not charged, or we were not arrested by the police for going to Mustak's home. We were not charged for going by Piper's home. We were in the public space. We went in front of the homes of these persons in an attempt to indicate to these persons that we, the Trinidad and Tobago citizens, are no longer going to tolerate the foolishness that goes on in these companies and goes on in government.
Yeah, but sometimes sometimes you can't control the behavior of some of the people who are associated with you, because there are those who are more extreme than others and who are therefore more agitated, and you can't control what they would do and what they wouldn't do. But in the case of that yesterday, you said that you all were met by police officers. You all met police officers there who would probably form some kind of cordon. So did you
on
get
the three occasions? On the three occasions, police officers came.
Yeah.
On the three occasions, police officers came. Just as yesterday, we were met with police officers. In the other two occasions, police officers came after. All right, and they cautioned us, and they indicated to us that what is expected of us, etc., etc. And they did indicate to us that we're coming home or in front of the homes of persons and so on. It would be seen as an intimidation. It would be seen as this, that, and the other, etc., etc.
And what's your response to that?
As activists in trying to get across the point to these individuals that we are no longer going to tolerate misfits in office, and that is the point that is most relevant here, and we need to understand
misfits in office. Yeah, and then so after you continue you make your presence felt outside their homes, but is that not opening the door for that kind of activism to go further? Because you take one step and you take another, and next thing you know, it gets out of hand. How do you control for people's emotions depending on how they feel about these situations?
Well, you see, like I said, we were very careful in executing that, and somebody would have indicated to me, send out the address, them fellas and them deserve it and that kind of thing. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. That would be irresponsible of I to do that. I'm merely pushing it to a certain point, a certain limit, and there is a limit. There's a limit where you go, and there's a limit where you do. Well, you don't go beyond that limit. All right, and I have indicated that to the police officer. The police officers knows that for a matter.
So did they drive off and leave you all there, or how it ended?
Well, they waited until we left. All right, and we were not going to overstay, our, if I could use the word, welcome.
Welcome, yeah. So you made a point about tuning up and that. So you think you sent a message?
Yes, yes. Well, it's the very reason why I'm on the program this morning.
All right.
Because it creates a new conversation. And a lot of people is going to weigh in on this and going to be talking about it and so on and so forth. And that's how you get things going in a society, and you get change happening in a society. All right? You have to be bold enough to take that initiative, to go that extra mile. Now, the thing about it is that we are simply asking our officials in Trinidad and Tobago to do the right thing. All right? Why it is the civil society has to come and fill that void that government was supposed to fill, that the Paria company was supposed to fill with the families.
All right.
Why? Okay. In other countries, when you see these things happening, you see the minister and the prime minister and all those persons, all the stakeholders there with the families, crying with the families,
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. So thank you very much.
Families.
We're going to have
Nothing
to,
like that happened in this case.
All right, thank you very much. We're gonna have to leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Umar Abdullah. We will take a break, and when we come back, we go back to what happened or didn't happen over the beginning of this week, which was Carnival in Trinidad and Tobago. We had a taste of Carnival. That's what we were told it was going to be. Some people went, did their own things in some ways, and ended up well, in the hands of police officers. People who tried to have Juve jump ups here and there, and I think I saw figure 69 people, some like were arrested for breaching whatever the rules and regulations were. We want to talk about that, and well, the historicism of what we saw, what should have happened in any case, with the first 2 days of this week, Monday and Tuesday, with Dr. Yvonne Bob Smith. When we come back, stay with us.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers?
Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw,
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers.
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
Only on WESN.
the content capital.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
It may seem like the hardest thing to do right now, but we all need each other to wear a mask, wash our hands, watch our physical distance, and stay at home. We need you safe. Together we can make the difference. Together we can curb the spread of COVID-19. So let's be responsible in our actions.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to the program. Well, we are making arrangements to be conducting our discussion with Dr. Yvonne Bob Smith on what we saw, what was there, and what people thought should have been there that wasn't there with the Taste of Carnival 2022. Before we get to that, there are some of the staples. We want to look at the numbers this morning. COVID-19 in our midst. They run down the total positive cases, the new positive cases, the active cases, the persons in hospital, and the rest of it. And then on the back of that, we'll tell you what the Newsday poll is, the question and the responses. So let's begin to look at the numbers. 103,451, that's the totally recovered patients from COVID-19 since we began the counting. 21,883, the total active positive cases in our midst. The death toll thus far, 3,642. 128,976, those are the positive cases, the total number since we began the counting on March 12, 2022, yesterday. 285, those were the new positive cases reported in the 24 hours up to the end of yesterday. And 260, that's the number of people in patients in the parallel health system across the country regarding this COVID-19. That's the update for March 3rd, which was yesterday. So let's look at the Newsday poll now, and the question is, should the remaining COVID-19 restrictions be removed now that Carnival is over, and why? Why should they be removed if you think they should, and probably why not if you think not? Here are some responses. It didn't have any restrictions because money was involved. Only thing it had was police taking advantage of the unprivileged citizens for enjoying themselves instead of killing each other. Another response. If there's a spike of cases from the Taste of Carnival and these so-called Juve Zessa Fets, I do not think these regulations should be removed right now. It is too early to have the remaining restrictions removed. A third response. England has a 91% vaccinated rate. The US has a 76%. Trinidad has 50% vaccinated rate. What a stupid question to pose. And the final response. You see, the media and the government, them is not we friend. That was the plan. All you notice the Alsing not crying or disappointed anymore, and the doctor lady not weeping over alleged lack of space in the ICU anymore. And the doctor lady not weeping over alleged lack of space in the ICU. Skewed statistics to suit the covert agendas rolled out during this pandemic. All right, one of the things that fascinates me, people write in our vernacular on these matters. It tells you where they're coming from a lot. So we're going to take a look around the region. We begin that this morning with Jamaica. Students from Jamaica being brought back home. Imagine that they were studying in Ukraine and got caught up in what is happening there now. It tells you where we are a lot of times without proper knowing. So Jamaican students in Ukraine studying, and they have to be brought back home. Take a look at this from TVJ.
Jamaican students on their way home from Ukraine, says Johnson Smith. 20 Jamaican students were scheduled to arrive on the island on Wednesday, March 2. The Sangster International Airport in Montego Bay, St. James, are on their way. The update was given Wednesday afternoon by Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, Senator Kamina Johnson-Smith.
And all our friends of Jamaica who have been supporting and praying for our students in Ukraine. Just wanted to let you know the good news that although their flight was a little delayed, 20 students are on their way to Jamaica. And again, I can't say it enough, we give thanks. The others are all out of Ukraine. They're all accounted for, so I wanted you to know that. I know some of you have been concerned and asking questions as to the well-being of the young lady who had left after everyone on her way from East Ukraine to Poland. So they're all out of Ukraine now, and we give thanks for that. Even as we pray for the people of Ukraine, who are having their lives terribly upended by this war. I know that some of you have also been asking about the young lady whose cat is not being allowed to enter Jamaica right now because of the high incidence of rabies in Ukraine and the fact that Jamaica is one of just a handful of countries in the world that has managed to eliminate rabies. So our tight restrictions are very important to the health of our population as well as, health of our animal and people populations. So these are important regulations. But what I have done is I've called and spoken with the head of the Veterinary Services Division. There happens to be a set of German veterinarians in Jamaica at this time, and linking through him and the JSPCA and the veterinary community, we've identified someone who can assist with placement of the cat at a facility in Germany where she would be able to go through the different stages necessary for her to travel to Jamaica. So by now they should have contacted her by email to let her know the contact information of the person who can assist. And we do hope that the family will be able to take up their services. So again, Jamaica, thank you for all your prayers. Please keep them up for the people of Ukraine, that there will be a cessation of hostilities and a return to sustainable peace. Bless you all, and bless Jamaica land we love.
Well, that's the Jamaican Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. Her name is Kamina Johnson-Smith. She's a senator. Jamaicans studying in Ukraine. You want to know what are the areas of focus? And so 20 of them are being brought home, but the others are safe wherever. So it's many more than 20 we would imagine. It will be interesting to know what they're studying in Ukraine. But we go to Guyana now, and a former minister, Dunstan Barrow, was selected as the director of the Critical Natural Resource Fund. You hear more of that from, I think, is the news source Guyana.
The government has used its majority on the Parliamentary Committee of Appointments to push through its nominee for the Natural Resource Fund Board, Dunstan Barrow, while ignoring the two nominees put forward by the opposition. The APNU-AFC opposition coalition today nominated Chartered Accountant and Attorney Christopher Ram and former head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Vincent Adams, to be considered for the position of director on the board of the Natural Resource Fund. The government side nominated former Guy Mine CEO Dunstan Barrow for the same position. Mr. Barrow is also a former PNC Member of Parliament who has been away from active politics for over 2 decades. Under the Natural Resource Fund Act, the National Assembly is allowed to put forward one person to sit as a director on the board, which will overlook the spending of the country's oil wealth. The other board members will be selected by the President. The opposition members on the Committee of Appointments walked out of the meeting this afternoon as it became clear to them that the opposition's nominees were going to be ignored, and the government would use its majority on the committee to ensure its nominee is the person who will be put forward for the position. One opposition official with knowledge of today's meeting said that the government has shown that it has no interest in transparency and inclusivity, since it has blocked the opposition nominees for the seat on the NRF board. The official said the government side had no interest in even giving a fair hearing or consideration of the opposition nominees. News source understands that once the opposition walked out of the meeting after the government made known its preference, the government went ahead and sealed the deal by voting for its own nominee. The nominee's name will now be sent to the National Assembly for final consideration. With the government holding the majority in the Assembly, its nominee is expected to be given the all-clear and sent to the President for appointment to the board, along with the President's own nominees. The opposition had initially indicated that it was not going to participate in the process, as it maintains that the bill, which has since been signed into law and has created the Natural Resource Fund Act, was not properly passed. There has been no move to the court to challenge the passage, and the opposition decided to submit nominees. The Alliance for Change was the first to put forward a nomination. It was the AFC that nominated Vincent Adams. The nomination of Christopher Ram for the position came from the PNC Reform, which is the largest party in the APNU-AFC coalition. The opposition has expressed concern about transparency and overlooking the spending of the oil funds by a board that was fully put together by the government. The President has said that he will be fair in his choices for the NRF board membership.
Well, we have some more looks at different things happening in different parts of the region. But we'll take a break. We'll be back in a moment. We'll share with you what's on the news, the front pages of the Newsday newspapers, Trinidad and Tobago as well, coming up ahead of us. So stay with us.
Alexa, can you play my song, please? Every day across Trinidad, Flow is connecting communities near and far. Our dedicated teams are always working to keep you connected to the world beyond your doorstep. Improving internet accessibility across Trinidad, one home at a time. At Flow, we work hard for you, so you work hard for your family on the largest high-speed network. Connecting you to more every day with Flow.
Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from FanZone with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. FanZone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at 7 Main Road, MacBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
All right, so we take a couple of moments to tell you what's in our partner in this business, at least in this program on this station, Newsday, partner India Media. This is the front page of the Newsday today. This is the Newsday Trinidad and Tobago, and this is the back page. Let's just tell you some of what is in here. So you saw the story on the front page saying that there's been this committee set up to prove what happened with that tragedy that has claimed 4 lives in the waters off Point-a-Pierre, the Paria tragedy, we're calling it. And the story says, the headline, as you see, time for answers. This committee has been appointed with a mandate to come back with a response in 45 days, a report as to what transpired. One of the things Mr. McLeod said yesterday in talking with us, and we shared that with you again this morning in the news, was that he thought that there was too much heat around the issue, and that there should be a cooling off period. He says that there are people grieving and people suffering from loss in this, and he thought that some of the rhetoric was going a bit too far, that people weren't taking into account exactly the magnitude of this. And one of the things he said in that discussion we had with him yesterday, that he couldn't see how it makes sense to request or to suggest, to propose even, that relatives of some of these people who met their death in this accident should be part of the probe team to try and find out what happened, the rights and the wrongs, and the wherefores as to what happened, because those people would not be in any position to do that. They are too closely involved. Some people have been traumatized by it. They're not going to be objective as one is seeking to have established in this matter. So it doesn't make sense. He doesn't see that. He sees somebody who's very versed and very experienced with trying to get objectively at the bottom of something that has happened. And he spoke with us yesterday on the basis of the fact that he was an oil worker himself, and he has experience with closed shaves, and he has been in an accident in the oil industry. I must say that in the energy industry, though, that from my own experience, from where I grew up, in fact, I grew up on a street called Oilfield Road in a village named Los Bajos. That's my birthplace. And in the history that I've had, there used to be a time when accidents were sort of par for the course in the oil industry. We've come a long way from that, but these things happen from time to time, not to minimize it in any sense at all, but to say that, and Mr. McLeod said that when in the story that I read from him. He's saying that there are always possibilities, even with the greatest will in the world, even with the best laid plans, as the people say, with the best infrastructure of one kind or another, and all the pieces put in place as they should, accidents happen. And we have to take that into account. We have to strive for them not to happen. There used to be a count as the numbers of things that happen, in fact, in the oil industry and elsewhere in industry in Trinidad and Tobago. When they happen, they always are tragic, but that we've come a long way in Trinidad and Tobago with safety, particularly in heavy industries such as in the oil industry, from where it used to be. I've known people who were killed with explosions around rigs and oil wells, people falling off rigs. It used to be a feature of the job, but we've traversed a lot of ground between when I was growing up and this point. But that there are those moments when things happen. We hear the stories as to what transpired in this particular case. We hear the intervention of the Coast Guard, who stopped an operation from taking place because this young Mr. Kerban, who had got out on top of the water safely, and he wanted to go back, and he felt certain he could have gone back and tried something to help get the others out, and the Coast Guard prevented him from doing that. And so he will forever hold that in his mind, because he felt that he could have done something that would have probably changed the course of how this thing turned out. And so all of that is part of what this committee is going to probe: who did what, who said what, who didn't do what they were supposed to be, and who didn't say. I could also tell you that there is a view that the company, one of my colleagues who was a reporter and then spent the better part of his life in corporate communications and public relations in the state sector mainly, he described it as, from what he was seeing, is this term that he said that this company appears to be operating with seat of the pants operations, which means that there are, and in some of what we've seen, the gaps in the communication that appeared to show themselves that the company was operating with missing levels of management and participation in its structure, and that's why you had who was speaking to the people, and in the earlier days of this, and they were missing some parts, particularly in some people have, well, you heard Ravi Balgovind Maharaj yesterday saying that it appears that this company does not have in place a proper crisis management response structure. So all of that is in the mix. Whether or not that is those things are going to be looked at the end of the day, we will see what the team brings to bear. Although you heard Mr. Omar Abdullah saying that he and his team do not trust the objectivity of the team that is put together because there are members of other oil industry companies, and the question is to what extent, because of their relations with the government, they could find themselves being compromised. I don't accept that. I don't believe that, because I believe in the integrity of individuals. And sometimes you have to, it's how it looks sometimes and not what is on paper. And some people question that. Just the looks of it. But sometimes we have to take it more than that. We have to believe in people's objectivity and people's public spiritedness, that they will do the job as they are required to do, regardless of what other things that might be in the shadows. We have to believe in people's integrity more than we do a lot of times, although that has been tested to a great extent. So that's a big issue in the paper, in the news day today. 45 days for the group to come back and report as to what transpired. So we see what the situation is there. But we're going to take a break. We have the news on the other side of that. Ashley Bernard, as we said, a lady who knows this business about relationships and what should happen, and what, particularly when it goes wrong, answering the question as to put, how do you respond to this, that continually when young ladies get into trouble, they are told from one platform or the other that they should choose wisely. To what extent that is effective counseling, as we say. So stay with us. We're coming back.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
In this season, we talk more about health, wellness, and everything in between. I am so excited to share with you everything about health and wellness so that you can design the life that you've always dreamed of. Join me here on What's Up Doc.
What's Up Doc?
Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We the police officers, we are professional and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, is for all of us in public.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to the program. We're joined now by a young lady whose name is Ashley Burnett. We have here that she's a domestic violence counselor. I saw a note about who she is. She's much more than that. There's a lot of things she's involved in, a lot of things having to do with social activism of one sort or another. But she was suggested as the person we spoke with in my search for somebody who could address this issue about the state of affairs regarding mainly young people, young women in Trinidad and Tobago, the issue, what they call gender-based violence. Some of us still need to uncrack that term, what it means, because I could tell you that when the death of Andrea Barrett happened a year and 2 months ago, and this lady had gone forward to say that she was in fact a victim of one of the men whose picture she'd seen in the paper, and she made a report at the Arima police station. She didn't think that she got proper treatment there, particularly from a male police officer, and she'd protested against it. And in trying to get behind that, I talked to the lady who's head of the gender-based violence unit at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, Ms. Kyle, and she said, well, I'm thinking that is a matter that would be on her plate as well, and she said no, because it's just it didn't qualify. And my question was, how come a matter like that, somebody reporting what transpired with them going to make a report in the police station and being treated less than she expected by a male officer? How would this person who's in charge of the GBV unit in the police service, that doesn't come under her? But that's another matter. Maybe I see Ms. Burnett shaking her head about it because it's a quizzical kind of response. But in this case, in the last couple of months, we had young ladies who continued to show up as victims of the partners they choose. And in one case, I think it's a 21-year-old young lady whose mother was among those saying, well, sometimes people speak from the position that this is what is available to them, that they should choose wisely. Let's start with, how does a 21-year-old know how to choose wisely? Ashley Burnett, good morning.
Hi, thank you so much for that question, and even for the precursor to that question. So that narrative, I think it is something that is ingrained in our culture, where we believe that in order for us to be free and to be safe, we have to make the choice to be safe. But in fact, that reinforces a really harmful norm, and it does not place the responsibility on perpetrators. So a 21-year-old person cannot choose wisely, right? They can make decisions about how they are able to carry about themselves and what how they engage. But we cannot tell people how to treat us, right? Because when we think about how we've been socialized, right, of course, we have all gone through different social institutions, but perpetrators, they may have gone to the same schools that we may have gone to. Who knows, maybe their families were families that would have taught them the right thing. But of course, they have different types of influences. And placing the onus on the victim to protect themselves, it leaves the perpetrator in the dark. The responsibility goes onto the person who's experiencing that violence, and then there's no accountability. And what happens in a society like that is that these issues of violence will continue to repeat itself, because who is taking care, who is ensuring that perpetrators are accountable for what they do? So we cannot reinforce a system of victim blaming. It is quite harmful, and it's something that we see all the time. When you look at the comment section, when someone goes missing or someone winds up dead, you always see people saying, so why did she go out so late? Who was she with? Why did she decide to wear whatever she wore? And those things do not automatically make you a victim, right? You should not be hurt based on what you wear, based on where you go, and which taxi you take. You should be able to be free, because that's a human right. And I think we have so much more work to do to really transform our culture. We have to ensure that we actually have the proper education and proper systems to ensure that we know better. And just a flag, I'm not a domestic violence counselor. I am the youth project coordinator for the First Time Last Time project at the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. So I think things kind of got crossed up there.
All right, you said for the first and say that again. The first and
the First Time Last Time project.
Right, the First Time Last Time project. Okay,
yes.
I want to get to talking about that a little bit. So you open the door on that, but there's another door before that, and the whole issue of what is called victim blaming. Let's uncrack that and. Talking about the term itself and what does it mean, in a broad kind of context.
So victim blaming is in the word when we think about the definition, but of course it's a very common jargon that a lot of feminist activists will use, but it is placing the blame and the responsibility on the person who have been harmed as the sole person for the reason of that harm. So, for example, someone may experience sexual assault, and we put the onus on them for what has happened to them. So you say maybe they were wearing something that was too short, maybe they were out too late, maybe, and this happens a lot, and I think this is a lot to unpack here. Why did they go there alone? They should have asked a guy to walk with them. And so it removes the perpetrator completely, the person who would have caused the harm, and places all the responsibility on the victim. So it's blaming the victim for what has happened to them, which is not a good thing at all. It's very, very harmful.
Yeah, and sometimes it is the response of people who really care and who believe that is good advice, but it is not always is productive, and sometimes
it's not a productive thing, and I think there's so much more for us to do as a society for us to get to that point where it's no longer a belief. I think we've been able to make a bit of progress with our policies and our laws, and I think, yes, that's a good step. But then when it comes to implementation and ensuring that people are actually protected and they have access to the same rights that they are afforded, that's where it gets a bit tricky. And so you can have policy, you can have laws, but what happens if the person that often the victims, they're not aware of what laws exist, they're not aware of what protection they deserve. And you rightfully said that sometimes you go to make a report and you don't get the service that you're supposed to get. You're not protected, you're not served as you should. And people tend to lose trust in law enforcement because of these same stories and of these same experiences. So it has to be this collective approach where, yes, you have the policies, yes, you have the laws, but then we need the education. We need our state actors to actually come and say, this is how it should be, rather than, playing into the trope of misogyny, because we've heard it a lot. We've heard previous leaders state that, they're not in the bedroom, they're not in a woman's choice of men, and that reinforces victim blaming because it's not about choice. It's way more deeper than that.
Yeah, I think given that very term, that very piece of advice, I think the current Prime Minister had said that earlier up in his term when you had another incident, and that was it. And so some people, so if the Prime Minister could, that is advice, and people give these pieces of advice with all sort of conscientiousness, and well, you have to protect yourself.
Yeah, and if it comes from the top, it becomes very difficult for other people who are, let's say, the common man, to even search for clearer answers, because people usually listen to what their leaders say. And if you have leaders reinforcing those very, very harmful norms that feminist activists are trying to work against, then you're hitting a wall constantly. So even leaders need to be educated on the issues of gender-based violence, need to be sensitized to these issues, how to treat with these issues, because it's a very human thing. It is not a woman's issue or a man's issue. It's a human issue. And we all should be educated on it, and we all should know how we should approach victims and survivors, because yes, we may not be someone who is an expert in the field, but at some point you are going to encounter someone. It's very common in the Caribbean where sometimes in a family you know of somebody who would have caused harm to another relative, but it's kept hush-hush. And that is just how the Caribbean is, but it isn't something that we should encourage, because we have that chance to really transform who we are as a people.
And what are your bits of advice on not encouraging it? Because
not encouraging it, it takes a lot of unlearning, but willingly. Yes, there might be programs that's enforced, but then if the person does not want to learn, it's going to go through one ear and come through the other, right? And come out the other. So I would say first you need to recognize that you in fact have some problematic views, and that takes probing those thoughts when it comes of why and where is it coming from, and then of course trying to learn and do better. There are several organizations here in Trinidad and Tobago that you can find and get information from to be able to learn and do better. But on a larger scale, we definitely need our education to be transformed. I know the Institute for Gender and Development Studies, they are currently trying to work with the Ministry of Education to amend the health and family life education curriculum to include family violence, so that people, as they're growing up, they're able to learn and understand what is gender-based violence, what is family violence, because that is how prevention begins. You have to learn it before the issue happens, right? You can't, the issue can't happen and then you learn about it, because you're not preventing anything. You might be preventing another instance of it. But I'd say we definitely need to transform our education systems. And as individuals, we have that social responsibility to learn and do better and unlearn the harmful thoughts that we once had.
Yeah, you use the term the health and family life education, and that's an issue in itself, because I remember when people were talking about bringing the kind of education that was necessary for young people in schools and so on, they were talking about it using the term sex education, and for years the people in authority figured that we shouldn't call it sex, so they found a different way around it. So that's how health and family life became sort of the substitute for it. And when you do things like that, does it take away from the essence of what you're trying to get at, or it forced the policymakers then to probably broaden the scope of what the learning should be about?
Definitely. I think using euphemisms, right, to try to mask the truth of issues definitely kind of waters down what we're supposed to address. So there is this, worldwide curriculum, a concept called comprehensive sexuality education, that inherently doesn't just deal with sex, right? It deals with bodily autonomy, it deals with menstruation, it deals with reproductive health, and there are a host of other things that it deals with. And when we try to change that up, you take out bits and pieces to suit your agenda, it becomes very harmful, because you see a lot of young people, they grow up making uninformed decisions, and you cannot make an informed decision if you are not informed. And so we are setting young people on a really dangerous path where they do not know, one, how to identify red flags, how to be able to engage in healthy relationships, and not relationships as in, being in a romantic partnership, but understanding how to interact with their peers in a non-violent way, which is what the First Time Last Time project aims to do, by the way, when it comes to promoting healthy relationships. But also it teaches you about consent and coercion, which is something that in my experience in facilitating various sessions, is that a lot of people do not understand consent and coercion, which is very scary, because not understanding that sometimes you end up in really difficult situations where you either become a perpetrator or you become a victim because you do not have that concept of consent. And I don't think we have a culture of consent in Trinidad and Tobago. You hear it in the music, but you also see it around carnival time. You see it in parties. You see it in a lot of places where people believe that, because you came to a party, because you're on the street in a carnival costume, it means I have to take what I want from you without asking. And that's a very pervasive norm that we hear all the time. And it's very dangerous because when people say no, where they do not give consent, that is challenged until they possibly say yes or until they wind up dead, which is a life and death situation for sure.
Yeah, I want to come back to some of that, but let me just give you some chance to talk about, is the First Time Last Time movement, or was the name?
No, it's a project.
Project, First Time Last Time project. I think I have a sense of what First Time Last Time means. This is the one and only time when this should happen, and this is about. Yeah, so talk a little bit about it. About the project.
So the First Time Last Time project is currently in its pilot phase. We began rolling it out, the actual sessions, 2 weeks ago, and it's geared at promoting healthy relationships and engagement amongst adolescents. So we've used a target group of 15 to 20 years old, which is, your formative years. And we've engaged facilitators from the pilot areas that we're working in. So we are working in Rio Claro, Mayaro, and Tobago. And we would have conducted a session where we got persons within the community and trained them to be facilitators who are now delivering this this program, this manual, which was developed by Amilcar Sanatan, to participants. And so we've expanded our reach for the participants. So they are from Trinidad and Tobago. It's nationwide. And these sessions really target understanding gender and gender-based violence, understanding gender equality, understanding how to engage in nonviolence. So what does a healthy relationship look like? What is love? What is power? And how can they ensure that they have mutual respect for everyone? And of course, how to engage in healthy communication. Because yes, we acknowledge that our history is quite a violent one, and there's a lot of trauma in our bodies and how we engage, but it's important for us to be able to identify that and then figure out how do we move forward with addressing these issues. So the First Time Last Time project is in its pilot phase, and we're hoping to be able to roll it out even more. And this is being done by the Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And so the end goal is for that young people are now equipped with the tools for them to practice nonviolence. So the idea is, as you rightfully said, is that the first time that they may be a perpetrator, a bystander, or a victim, that will be the last time, because now they have the resources, they have the tools, they know exactly what to do and what they deserve and what should be done. And so it would not happen again. And that's the hope. It's going to be really difficult. It's not going to just happen in a couple of weeks. We hope to develop this relationship with the participants and the facilitators moving forward so that we can really track their development and how we can really improve moving forward. So it's our pilot, and we're going to test it to see how can we improve it for the next time.
All right. What is required for the sort of full-on rollout?
Yeah. So currently we are in the middle of it. So we have about 4 more sessions left. And so we would have had a manual developed, and we would have had consultations from the community to see what happens. And so now we are trying to see what other financial support that we can gain to ensure that we have a wider catchment of persons moving forward. So we're in the process of working on that. And we really hope that the participants currently, that they see it as a valuable opportunity, but also understanding the pandemic and how difficult it is to really sit behind a screen for so many hours. That in itself is quite tedious. So we're hoping that the second rollout of this project can possibly be in person. We will see how that goes. But there's a lot of moving parts, but luckily we've gotten a lot of support. This is actually being funded by BHP and Global Financial. And so we're really grateful for corporate sponsors who really see the need and value for programs like these to support it financially and, giving whatever support that's needed.
Yeah, and you say it targets people, the age range is 15 to 20. All right. You had any experiencing any kind of challenges with trying to get people to allow their 15-year-olds to participate?
Yeah, luckily we've had, so we would have ensured that they got consent from their parents. But I think what happens, and this is something that is very common, is where family homes don't expect you to try to do too many things outside of academia. So you're in school, focus on school, right? This is not something that you should be doing right now when it's actually something that you should know about. It isn't a hobby. It isn't something that you have to be into to learn, right? And so that has been the only kind of issue that I would say to get people who are, under 18 to be able to commit to, because of course they have to get consent from their parents, and as if their parents see it as a valuable opportunity, which if you would have grown up and that's not something that you've been taught at all, you're like, why are you getting involved in something that is not school? Focus on your exams. So yes.
Yeah, and because, people are scared with the notion of letting their young ones, particularly young ladies, get anywhere near anything that has to do with sexuality. And protect them from that until, in our case, until probably it's too late for them to get oriented to what to expect and how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So that's a hurdle.
Yeah. And then you end up being someone who either victim blames, who becomes a perpetrator, who's unable to know how to engage in healthy relationships. And so it's so important that parents see the importance of engaging young people while they are still adolescents. Because when you go into the world and you do not have this knowledge, it's a very dangerous type of thing that you have to navigate. Because people usually bank on you not knowing. But in order to make an informed decision, you have to be informed. And that is something that we really have to advocate for. And hopefully it becomes the norm in some years to come.
Yeah, and thinking about these matters, and the term, the cropping up of the term grooming stays with me. It is seen as the term used for how people prey on others, particularly in sort of prohibited ways for relationships. And when I'm thinking about it, I think it happens at all levels and different kinds of circumstances, because even with adult men and women, some of us males, we employ this grooming on people we're trying to attract because we have ulterior motives. So we make the person feel safe and comfortable, but we have agendas that are not consistent with wholesome relationships that we want to. So we do and appear to be do things and appear to be interested in this person on a long-term basis, for sustainable ways. But we have one thing in mind. Once that happens, things change. So the grooming occurs across sort of age ranges and age groups and so on and so.
Yeah, but more commonly, a lot of people know about child grooming, which is something that usually. It's quite common, especially with the advent of social media. It becomes easier for someone to groom. But it's all about that power imbalance and that power structure. And so it can happen even if you are the same age, but you are working in a workplace and you may be the boss and somebody is like a secretary or somebody who is just not a part of that executive body. But it is something that we see a lot. And it's more common than we know, and that I think we choose to address, where a lot of young people, I remember being in high school and hearing when you travel about people who are with like older guys, and at that moment it seems as if it's normal. I remember thinking to myself as a person in high school, like, wow, like how come I can't get somebody who's older? And I'm pretty sure my mom hears this, she would be really shocked that I was even thinking that. But it was something that was so normalized that you would hear in these conversations about people who may be with older men. And they're getting gifts and they're getting different things. But in that moment, because you do not know that that's not a healthy relationship, that you're actually being preyed upon for the exchange of maybe sexual activity, or even just to be able to control where you go and what you do, you're not able to realize that that's actually a harmful relationship until you get older. You have the language, and now you're able to now unpack what has happened. And sometimes, unfortunately, because of how our justice system works, it's hard for you to actually get the justice in that moment if you realize it years later.
All right.
But it does happen with adults also.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Ashley Burnett. The First Time, Last Time project.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
All right. So that brings the curtain down on our broadcast for today, for this morning, and for this week. But before we go, let me just tell you to watch this. It has to do with some of the things that were coming our way for the Taste of Carnival, the Carnival Queen 2022. Take a look at this. Chanel Brizan on stilts while pregnant. That's what it says there, and you should know that. Well, as we wrap up, let me just tell you my commentary this morning. It's very simple, very short. I don't support the idea of picketing people's homes when you have disputes about in the public conduct in their public lives. They have families, they have privacy, their private lives, and that to me is crossing a line. That's my view, and I also support Errol McLeod's position that there should be a cooling of the heat, even as we respond to this tragedy in the Gulf outside of the Paria operations there. So that will do it for us for today and for this week. But tell you that at 10 o'clock this morning, my guest for 10 questions, communications expert Lisa Ann Joseph on the gaps in communication on this very matter. So stay with us for that. We're going to take you to the news at the top of the hour, followed by today's edition of Talking Point with Shah and Small. For now, though, that's our broadcast. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for watching.